So welcome to 30-Minute Talks. And once again, if I can welcome my hosts, co-hosts, Dr. Andy Nazarechuk and Professor Perry Hobson. And of course, our guest speaker for today, Bruce Korn, visiting us from Southern Cross University in Lismore, Australia. Andy, welcome to the show.
Actually, looking forward to today's topic with Bruce talking about golf tourism. And as you can tell, I have the 18th hole of Pebble Beach in the U.S., which is one of the best resorts and most famous golf courses in the world. So that's why I'm looking forward to today's talk about golf tourism.
Fantastic. Welcome, Perry.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And look, I'm going to be quite upfront here. I'm the non-golfer in this group today. So I'm looking forward to today's show to learn a bit more about it. I've played a few games, but that was many, many years ago. So I'm looking forward to catching up about this because golf tourism is something, and having watched many people lugging those golf bags through airports, I can see that golf tourism is a very significant part, a huge economic impact, lots of other things around golf tourism. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it today from Bruce. So welcome to everybody, and I'm seeing on the chat we've got people joining us from the University of Santo Thomas, from Doi Tan University in Vietnam. So it's great to have so many people, so please use the chat function to say hi and tell us where you're from. Back to you, Alan.
Thank you very much. And Bruce, once again, welcome to you.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks, Andy and Perry. It's good to be here.
And I've only played golf once with you, Perry, and in fact, we never actually got to the game from memory. I think we just got to the driving range, and that was at Byron Bay Golf Club from memory, was it?
Yeah, it was one of those days when I was living in Byron. That's right. And I think, well, no, we did. I think we got on the course there, but I think our last face-off has actually been on those putting courses over in Western Australia. So, as I recall, so that I haven't really been out on a full course for a while.
Fantastic. And just so that everybody knows, Andy and I have spent some time on some beautiful golf courses in the Philippines. So we'll share some of those stories maybe later on today if we've got some time. But as everybody knows, this show can't happen without the support of our academic partners. Dr. Andy, why don't you share some of the academic partners with us?
As always, we always appreciate our academic partners and, of course, our LPU, the Lyceum of the Philippines University. And I just see so many people from LPU on our chat today. Co-Rep, which is one of our latest joiners, a Co-Rep, a Council of Hospitality Educators in the Philippines, the Tourism Industry Board Foundation, University of Santo Tomas, so many supporters of our program, and they have all been helping us, giving us advice on how to improve the program. So we'll have some news coming out in the next couple of weeks about some improvements to the program, and looking forward to sharing that news with all of our attendees.
Thanks, Dr. Andy. And on that note, everybody, let's just move to there. And as everybody knows, we run a segment, 90 seconds every single week, and we get some great reviews from that. So what I might do is ask everybody to shut their video off for a few seconds. We'll run with today's 90 seconds segment, Playing Golf. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Dr. Andy Nazarechuk, and welcome to 90 Seconds. Today may be a little bit longer.
And hello, I'm Alan Williams, and today we're going to talk about golf. Well, almost everyone would know that Dr. Andy and I are both keen golfers. Not good golfers, but keen golfers. But the question is, do you play golf?
Yes, someday your boss is going to ask you if you play golf. If you say yes, you're going to get 4 hours with your boss and colleagues without interruptions. If you say yes, you'll have the opportunity to visit some of the most beautiful destinations in the world. And if you say yes, you'll have a healthy outdoor activity that you can enjoy for the rest of your life. Isn't that true, Alan?
Yes, most of you that play golf will also know that Mr. Arnold Palmer, he was an American professional golfer who is generally regarded as one of the greatest and most charismatic players in the sport's history. He showed to us that the value of consistency, hard work, and having fun in the game of golf, they're all attributes that make for a better golf game and a better life. And if you don't play golf, Andy, what happens?
Well, if you can't or don't play golf, someday your colleagues will be spending the day with the boss playing golf, and you'll be staying home, or worse, working. If you say no, you won't go to golf events, golf tournaments, and trips with your friends will pass you by. And if you say no, when you get old, you may not be able to box or run or play basketball, but when you retire, you'll have an outdoor activity, and golf is one of those things you can play for the rest of your life. How about your friends, Alan? Do they play golf?
Well, most of the times in sports, Andy, we're taught that we have to beat the other team, show no mercy, and be super competitive, because that's what our society has turned sports into. Golf, however, is different. Golf is a game of character and appreciation where cooperation is key. Humility is valuable and hard work is more important than luck. Arnold Palmer once said, the most rewarding thing you can do in life are often the ones that look like they cannot be done.
You're right, Alan. There's more to golf than just hitting the golf ball. These are my former students, and each year for over 10 years, we would train these students to run the food and beverage operations at the US Open and the AT&T Celebrity Pro-Am tournaments held at Pebble Beach. A great way to learn about the events part of our industry.
Yes, Dr. Andy, events. As with big events in life, it's the bigger picture that's important. Do not get lost in the little things that do not matter so much. Playing golf is a series of swings, but each swing aims for one specific goal, to get the ball in the hole in as few strokes as possible. The same can be said of pursuing your university degree, your career in hospitality and tourism, or any other major goal that you set for yourself in life. Where are you going and what is your plan to achieve your goals?
Yes, Alan, and you will have access to places that other people will never have the opportunity to see if you go to some of these tournaments.
As in golf, in business and life, when the stakes are high, make the most of every situation. Facing similar challenges in your life is, well, simply part of life. Doing the best you can and learning from every situation is all that you can ask of yourself. Ben Hogan had a great quote, the most important shot in golf is the next one. This acceptance of your circumstances and recalculating can pay dividends in a variety of other settings.
Alan, what are you doing in this photo?
Well, Andy, never say never. With hard work, even inexperienced golfers can make great strides and accomplish great things. Golf teaches you not to give up, even in the face of repeated failures. This is a big lesson that should be applied in everyday life. Never give up. Life is a lot like with this old adage, what does not kill you will make you stronger. So even though I'm continually challenged by golf, it has given me great rewards, meeting new people, hosting big events, and having fun with a whole bunch of friends.
Yes, golf has allowed me to bring students to one of the top resorts in the US, manage the corporate chalets, and have parts of an international tournament. It's something I will never forget, and it's all because I understand and play golf. Finally, you don't have to play like Tiger Woods to enjoy the game. You just need to be able to play.
The longer golfers spend worrying about bad shots, the less capable they are of making up for those bad shots. This concept is incredibly valuable in daily life, especially in academia and the work world. Everybody comes up short sometimes, but no matter how bad we mess up, there's always an opportunity to turn it around.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for your comments, and thank you for joining us for today's extended version of 90 Seconds.
And there we go, everybody. Another 90 seconds, and I'll just get Bruce to join us back on screen, if you don't mind, Bruce, and we'll run through. I'm hoping that gave us a nice prelude to today's session, Bruce. There was enough golf talk there.
Plenty of golf talk. Unfortunately, my address won't help people improve their game.
Okay. Well, I was hoping that was going to be one of the results of today, but if not, that's fine. We'll persevere with it. So,
well, maybe it'll engender some interest in people to get into it. Yeah,
absolutely. Today's talk, everybody, the economic impact or golf tourism and the economic impact of golf tourism on regional Thai communities, and a very, very interesting study, Bruce. So let me introduce Bruce to everybody a little more formally. Bruce Korn, soon to be known as Dr. Bruce Korn, after a career in tourism marketing and research, Bruce completed his Bachelor of Business in Tourism degree in 1996. And following tourism project work with the Lismore Council and the Tamworth Country Music Festival, Bruce moved to Thailand to teach tourism business and also English at Christian University from 2006 to 2009. On returning to Australia, Bruce completed his MBA, an honours degree, and recently his PhD through Southern Cross University. Bruce was tutoring students through much of this period, and Bruce is obviously a keen golfer, a keen pool player, and loves the golf courses of Southeast Asia. So once again, Bruce, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I'll get you to share with us some of your thoughts in relation to your study.
Thanks very much, Al. Well, with your introduction, my interest in this topic really occurred in 2006 when I moved to Thailand. And as a golfer, I was introduced to the one of the senior English professors there who was very keen to get me into the local golfing scene, introduced me to one of his PhD students, who was once a mature age student, and we started to play golf at Uniland. And the first thing that I noticed was the difference between playing golf in Australia and playing golf in Thailand. And that particularly occurred through the caddy situation. This is quite new to me. In Australia, we don't normally have caddies. Whereas in Thailand, I soon learned that it was a compulsory activity, that you couldn't really play golf without having a caddy. And the thing that triggered in me was, well, this must have an enormous impact on the surrounding communities. So from then on, I played a lot of golf over those 3 years, and this germ of an idea was in my mind all the time, to the point that when I came back to Australia, completed my MBA and an honours degree, and the honours degree looked at golf tourism in Thailand and exploration of players' constructions of an authentic Thai caddy. So that really started the whole ball rolling for me in this topic.
Thanks, Bruce. And I guess with that as a bit of a background for today's topic, and I appreciate that you've gone through many months and many years now of realizing, bringing that topic to realization. I'm sure there's a whole number of findings that have come out of that. So we'll have a bit of a conversation today, because I'm keen to learn some of the key findings of your studies. And I'm sure if we can share those with our audience today in terms of their interest in golf, their interest in golf tourism and golf development and all those sorts of things that I guess we'll talk a little bit about more today. So let's start with the first question. So firstly, from what I understand, your study looks at the impacts of golf course development in Thailand and on Thai communities. But I guess our audience may also like to know a little bit about the impact of golf tourism in Thailand and why maybe this development has occurred.
Sure. One of the things that I did when I began this study was strike up a friendship with a gentleman by the name of Mark Siegel, who ran an inbound tour company called Golf Asian. And I spoke extensively to Mark about the numbers of people that were coming through Thailand, and went back and did a bit of a literature search on it. At that time, back in 2012, it was about 750,000 people coming to Thailand specifically to play golf, which I thought was quite staggering. And that at that time was 50% up from the previous 3 years. So obviously there was a huge movement in the number of people wanting to go to Thailand to play golf. Research also found that Thailand was shortly to surpass Spain as the most visited golf destination on the planet. And once again, this quite fascinated me. I looked into why was Thailand's popularity as a golfing destination. There were a number of aspects that came forward. Firstly, the quality of the golf courses, the weather, the caddies, which I'd mentioned, the tourism infrastructure, the friendliness of the people, the safety, and the cost. And whilst there has been some increase in the cost of golf in Thailand, it still continues to be extremely popular as a destination. Most of the visitors are coming from Asia, particularly from places like Malaysia, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and even India, and increasingly now China. But there's also a very strong Western representation of golfers that come there on golfing holidays. This boom really started back in the 80s when the Japanese showed an interest. The cost of golf in Japan was becoming too great, and they were running out of land to develop golf courses. So they were looking at other parts of Asia that they could visit. So Thailand became one of the places that they really focused on to develop. And at the same time, many of the famous golfers of the day were involved in golf course development, like Greg Norman, Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo, all got involved in developments in Thailand. And as I said, through the overcrowded courses, the Japanese really also got involved in development and found it cheaper to play golf, found it cheaper to actually travel to Thailand than to play golf at home. And the golf tourism market in Thailand took off to such an advantage that in 1993, Tourism Authority of Thailand declared it as the year of golf holidays in Thailand. So they gave it a special prominence way back then. And further research showed that North Americans were opting to travel to Thailand to play golf in lieu of traditional destinations they would travel to, such as Scotland and Ireland, due to the prohibitive cost of those destinations. Golf in Thailand became a relative bargain compared with those other destinations. And at the same time, golf was becoming popular in Thailand itself with middle and upper classes in those developing areas. And combined with the foreign interests, a boom was being created. So throughout Southeast Asia, this Thailand became a hub for the other countries to start developing their golf product. And yeah, that's really where it started from there, and it's just developed from there.
I think you've given us a great idea of the scope of your studies. Were there any specific golf courses or regions in Thailand that you concentrated on?
Yes, I looked at two particular areas, both in central Thailand, both quite close together. One was the district of Thammasala, which is where Mngt golf course, which is a very, very recent development. In fact, quite a unique development. It has most golf courses are 18 holes, but most of them are broken into two lots of 9 holes. But Mngt did something quite different. They did 3 lots of 6. So it just made it a little bit more leisurely for players to play. And for those who are familiar with the game, know that it's broken up into par 3s, par 4s and par 5s. So they included, each set of 6 had exactly that configuration, 2 3s, 2 4s and 2 5s. So it was quite a unique concept. The other course I looked at was developed back in the late 80s called Uniland. And that's a picture of it there. A beautiful golf course. In fact, it's more than 18 holes, it's 27 holes. And instead of having 3 lots of 6, it's got 3 lots of 9 holes. But once again, a very, very challenging golf course and very, very popular, particularly with Koreans.
Absolutely. I've been fortunate enough to actually play at Mngt. So yeah, you're right. It's not your traditional golf course as in the 2 9 holes, but the 3 6s, an absolutely stunning course. Very, very professionally run, and you might have some more findings as we talk through. Yep. So I guess, as I said, the scope of your studies is absolutely impressive. What has been the impact on golf course development in that region? Tell me a little bit about, since during your studies and maybe even since that time, what sort of impact has golf development had on the local communities? Okay, well, if we can go back a little bit in history, back in the early 70s, basically, that's when golf started to happen and they weren't the sort of style of golf courses they are now. They were very natural courses, and many of them were owned by public entities, such as the Armed Forces of Thailand. There's quite a number of military courses still in Thailand, and they're not to the standard of other courses. Thai Railways actually owned a number of courses. And then during the 70s, some of the more prestigious private golf courses were established, such as Siam Country Club in Pattaya, Rose Garden, and Mngt near Bangkok. So these clubs, and they started to develop this quite, I would say, an elitist almost approach. Businesses were buying into these golf courses. They saw it as a way of doing businesses, and a number of golf courses were starting to be developed at a dramatic rate, right up until the 1990s was really a spurt in growth. Thailand was declared the fastest growing golf nation at that time. And 120 new courses were opened or planned during that period. So it just gave you some idea of, as I mentioned earlier, the number of visitors coming to Thailand, the number of new courses that were needed to be built to cope with it. Operators said that we still need another 300. Some said we still need another 1,000. So it just showed how it, I won't say got out of hand, but certainly there were very ambitious plans for the development of golf courses at that time. And a lot of them became integrated complexes too, where they had housing estates, condominiums attached to them. And it allowed for a lot of the emerging middle class, upper class in the major cities to travel to those areas and stay on the golf courses. It also allowed for a lot of the foreign visitors to come in and spend
not just a few days, but a week or two, and stay around the golf course that they were playing. A good example is one that I looked at quite closely was Black Mountain at Hua Hin in the southern part of Thailand. It was opened in 2007 and twice been named the best golf course in Thailand. And it was a fully integrated golf course, condominiums, villas. It even had things like a water park, a wakeboard park, spa, tennis, and just all those other facilities. But it was developed along a family line, so the family could come and stay and just enjoy Black Mountain. But I think one of the profound things too is that recently there was GBAS, an Asia Pacific course database organisation, so indicated that 118-hole golf courses had been built, or equivalent courses built across 89 facilities in Southeast Asia between 2004 and 2014. And 80% of those, as you've got on the slide, are 18-hole facilities, and Thailand makes up 34% of those new developments. But then again, Vietnam is also, there's a spurt on there with 32%. So Vietnam obviously is grasping the medal with new golf course development.
Absolutely, some very, very interesting figures, and for me, it's very interesting to see that Vietnam's pretty well following some of the traits of Thailand in terms of the, I guess the patterns of golf course development that have emerged out of Thailand. That leads very nicely into another question that I've got there. I know your studies has looked at the economic impact. We've just, explored some of that on the Thai communities. What communities did you analyse, and what were the economic impacts on these communities, specifically in terms of employment, types of jobs, and all those sorts of things? I mean, you mentioned housing condominiums, you've mentioned a range of, there's got to be a whole number of support services that build up as part of that whole development. Yep.
Well, I think probably to expand on that is really, I mentioned those two communities I looked at, where Uniland and Mngt are located. And those particular rural areas are known as Thammasala with Mngt, and the other one is Bang Kem Wang Yen, which is surrounding Uniland. One of the things that I really wanted to look at was just how employment was affected. And I mentioned earlier in the talk about the caddy employment and how I was impressed with the number of, particularly women in local communities that are employed in those communities. On those golf courses, I should say. And interestingly enough, whilst the golf courses were developed from agricultural land, the employment opportunities that have come about by replacing that agricultural aspect with the golf course has been quite profound. So it's rather than sort of having a negative effect on employment, has actually had a very, very positive effect on employment in the local area. Whilst caddies form the vast majority of employment, there are also jobs for other local people in the community. Anything from, working on other work on the golf course, such as maintenance or gardeners or whatever, to working in the clubhouse, in restaurants, bars, and with resort attached, such as Uniland had, also working through that resort and hotel. So a lot of opportunities that were arisen for those people to work. I did a small calculation that shows that in the district of Nakombaton, which is the larger area, that about 5% of the population would be employed in some, directly or indirectly, on those two golf courses. So I thought that was quite significant. One of the things I looked at also was how caddies are paid. So that the remuneration for caddies, the caddy being a slightly more, it is slightly more exclusive golf club. When you pay for your green fee, you actually pay for the caddy fee. At Uniland, which is a cheaper option, the player is responsible for the tip. But regardless, caddies often generally get tips, whether they're paid beforehand or after. So it can be a double whammy for them, and they can enjoy the benefit of that. So obviously the amount of tip they get is dependent on whether it's a set fee or the satisfaction of the player. But there's generally a set fee, even if it's not paid beforehand, so that there's a guaranteed income for the caddy when they finish their round. And that's generally around 300 baht, which in Australian language is about $15. So, and I did some calculations on how that generated through those communities. So I just did some conservative estimates on a caddy, caddying for say 250 days a year. That 12-month income for those communities would relate to about 37.5 million baht. So that's a lot of money back into those communities that the caddies are spending. And the respondents to my interviews were, generally speaking, very, very aware of the amount of money that was being generated in the communities by the caddies. And in fact, one business operator said, many visitors pass here. Caddies come for petrol and beverages, one's in pink uniform. And I bring that quote out because it just indicates the diversity of the services. That caddies, they go to work on motorbikes, and whilst they're also spending money on food and beverage and so on in the community, they're also spending things on things like fuel and things that they'd be using for their local daily lives. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a very good summary of, I guess, some of the economic benefits. What about social benefits? Did your study cross over into social impacts, social benefits to those communities?
Yes, I did, Al. Yeah, we did. One of the things that really comes through for me through the study was that the golf clubs are providing a lot of training for caddies. So, and that training doesn't just extend to being a good caddy, it extends through to language training. So, and also the relationship and the interaction that they have with golfers. And one of the focuses of my study was really on a thing called contact hypothesis. In other words, how the employees relate very much to the visiting golfers. And it was quite incredible that the caddies, through their language training, were able to relate to the golfers that came, and they were able to relate and communicate very effectively with them. So what they're doing is really exchanging a cultural experience on the golf course. So the golfers, if they know if they can talk to the caddy, they will often share something of themselves, and the caddies know they can talk to the golfer, will do likewise. And I saw that in a practical way when I played a lot of golf in Thailand, and it was quite a empowering experience. So it's similar to the host-guest encounter, tourism encounter that we talk about, and it really was a very positive experience. And it wasn't just for Westerners; it's also with Koreans, Taiwanese, Japanese, and the other visiting golfers that come. So they were interacting very well. And my experience was that the caddies are generally treated respectfully and remunerated appropriately, especially by the regular players and who engage their regular caddy. What else could I tell you about it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think adding on to what you've just pointed out there, Bruce, I mean, I'm using this picture or slide background at the moment with seafood markets. I mean, an example would be that when I travel to Thailand, the conversations I would have with the caddies are, where do you go to buy your local seafood? Where do you go to buy your fruit and vegetables? So that I do get that very local experience. Yeah. And generally, if you're staying in a hotel or you're staying in a whatever it might be, your accommodation, usually they're sending you to the local 7-Eleven or the local shopping center or whatever, and you don't really get to that very local experience. And I think what you're sharing there is exactly right. I've had that firsthand experience.
Well, actually, one of the things that I was going to talk about was a thing called OTOP, which is one tambon, one product. And a lot of the regions in Thailand adopt this OTOP approach where visitors come and they have a unique product that they buy. So it's quite appropriate if you've got, if you have a particular type of fish or whatever, or a local product that's made in your area, visitors will come and experience that. And that's one of the things that, visiting golfers can experience when they do this. So
I think Sorry, another benefit that I've seen. I've just put a picture up of a champion Thai golfer. What about the Thai communities and the kick-on effect of raising the profile of Thailand, the sporting, the champions of the sports and all that? Did you find much in that space?
Well, yeah, in fact, I did. A lot of the caddies, a lot of the very prominent Thai golfers now have started out as caddies. And the caddies often would tell me how they pride themselves on teaching the young Thais how to play golf, and I thought that was quite interesting. That they actually were very proud of just doing this and improving the skill of these people. So the other thing that I found too was that family unification was very important. In that culture, it's very, very important to have family together. And the golf course developments were able to bring these families back together through the work opportunities, employment either on the golf course or outside the golf course from visiting golfers, and the extra income that's going through the community. And also the community infrastructure has been developed by the golf clubs paying taxes to local government. So lots of additions like better roads, street lighting, things like improvement in their water supplies. And all these things were enhancing the local life and the social cultural aspect of their life. And I just found it. There was lots going on that was positive.
Fantastic. Let's have a look at some of your findings in how you might see the findings being applied to other communities, maybe other regions, other countries that are seeking to develop golf tourism or a golf tourism portfolio. And maybe let's just start with what are your top three tips that you might give to a region or a community that are looking at introducing golf courses and golf tourism?
Yeah, I guess one of the things I found was that the local communities really didn't have a major say in the initial development process. And one of the recommendations that came out of my study was that there needs to be a much more consultative process between local government and the communities. So between developers, local government and community to get together and develop a golf strategy. So whenever a developer is looking at a piece of land somewhere, that the first thing they need to do is start to talk to local government and the community and organise, the best things that can flow from this. And as I've already alluded to with this is, how can local people be involved? How can, what employment opportunities are there for them? And what are the benefits that can flow? And sometimes you trade off a benefit with a negative. If that can be upfront right from the start, that can only be good for the community, and it will set a precedent for other developments that will occur, so that it can only be positive for them. A stock take of land, so you should assess whether the land is viable or whether it's not viable. So there has been some criticism in the past that golf courses have been built on land that was very viable agriculturally. But then again, a lot of courses have been built that are built on non-viable agricultural land. So a stock take of that, and some of that could even be coastal land, which can provide an amazing aspect for a golf course in that environment. They probably need to hire someone who really knows how to drive that process. And can bring together those people that can put forward ideas that will be positive for those communities in the future.
Fantastic. I think, you've certainly shared with us a lot of great information and great insight into your study. It sounded like a very, very interesting study. What duration, what time did you undertake the study over?
In the end, I spent almost 7 years on this study.
Wow.
So wow. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on it. It was 2 trips to Thailand in the end. Well, actually, it was more. I actually did 4 trips. I did a feasibility. I did what's it called? A prior study. And then I did 2 trips where I gathered data. So yeah, all up it was 4 years. 4 times I went. But it was appropriate that I do that because I needed to get in depth into this study. What I've provided today is just a tip of the iceberg, really, of what I've uncovered and what I've found. And, you know, I had an awful lot of data on interviews that were provided, and you know, going through that whole translation process. That was probably the biggest challenge, was interviewing in Thai, and then translating and getting those responses back in English. So yeah, it was a lengthy process, but I'm glad, you know, I was able to do it. Yeah, and I had some very, very effective people working with me. Had a Thai actually I had 3 Thai coordinators assisting me through the process. So yeah.
Well, congratulations, you know, on sticking with and working through it. What I might do, Bruce, is let's ask Dr. Andy and Perry to join us again, and sure. Let's see if they've got any questions from our participants today, and if there's any questions that maybe they've come up with themselves. Andy, Perry, and before I hand it over to them, let me just thank you for sharing those insights, sharing your very knowledgeable space, your very knowledgeable area of golf tourism and golf course development. So thank you for your insights, everybody. And let's at least give Bruce a virtual round of applause. Well done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Bruce, actually, the first question I have is similar to what Tina Aquino says. Is, you know, now that there's COVID-19 out there and everybody wants to find activities to do, golf is one of those activities where it's open air and it's outside. Do you see that will help the future business grow in golf course activities?
Yeah, well, it actually has created a boom in certain parts of our country. There's one state that decided they would ban people from playing golf, but the rest of the country decided that was not quite appropriate. Oh, pardon me. But yeah, we in my local area, we experienced a boom in membership at a local golf club because people thought, well, what can we do? And golf was one of those options. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that going forward, that once people have discovered the joy of playing golf, they'll continue and pass it on to others.
Very
fantastic. Perry, what?
Yeah, well, I was just having a quick look at our chat and question function here. We've got one from Bob Zobarado, who is the chairman of the Party Philippines chapter. And he's making the point that golf tourism rivals in every country, anywhere in the world, including Thailand, represent just 1% of the arrivals. But even in most of these golfers are big spenders. Is golf tourism expected to bump up the country's tourism industry coffers, or is it designed to make the community where the golf course is sustainable? So, you know, one of those challenging issues has come out, I think, about golf and this issue of sustainability going forward. So economic trade-offs, sure, but also some of the other issues that are coming in there. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, you know, there's been good projects and there's been poor ones. Now, and particularly for the Philippines, there was a project called Hacienda Look, which Tiger Woods himself got involved in, which was quite a disastrous approach, where they had to abandon it. And it gets back to my comments earlier about community consultation, and the only way you can really have sustainability is getting the community to agree that it's going to be beneficial for them, and for developers and local government to also come together and decide the best way forward and how that can happen. So, you know, you can't blanketly say, and, you know, a lot of my literature went back into the negative effects of golf and environment, particularly from an environmental perspective. But a good sustainable management program will ensure that that golf course can be productive to the local community in more ways than one, beyond economically, and also, you know, can be environmentally sustainable, so, and Bruce, social, culturally important.
Bruce, let me ask you this, Bruce. If you were to say, so the Philippines, for example, to play golf in Japan or even play golf in Korea is very expensive. Some of those tourists and golfers like to come to the Philippines, they can play more golf and have a better experience at a lower expense. It's actually cheaper to come here to play golf than to play in their home countries. So would you say that golf is one of those industries or activities that a tourism department can promote as sort of the first healthy activity or tourism destination after COVID-19?
Well, certainly I'd agree with that. But I think also too, as I mentioned briefly in my talk, that golf is increasing in cost. I've experienced that in Thailand. I don't know what the current situation in the Philippines is, whether it's still relatively cheap. I know you have some very, very nice resort courses there, which I imagine are reasonably expensive. But I imagine also you have a lot of golf courses that aren't. So it gets down to your market and what they can afford to do, what they would normally pay at home to play golf. So it's really comparing the cost of golf, wherever you're living, with traveling to another destination and experiencing. There's always going to be a little factor too associated with the quality of the golf course. And I know in Australia, a lot of people will travel to play. They'll pay more to play really good golf courses. So it's part of the experience.
Well, listen, gentlemen, I think we are starting to run out of time. Are there any closing questions, comments that you, Perry and Andy, have picked up that we can maybe sum up the session with?
I would say that golf is one of those activities that we should all pay more attention to from the industry side, to say how do we support the golf industry from the tourism, government, and entrepreneurship and students. And there was a question here, the future of how should students look at it? Golf is one of those areas where there's country clubs, there's golf course management, and golf pros. There's a lot of training. There's a lot of things that happen at country clubs. My first job in high school was as a country club, and that's where I had to learn about the golf course and what you can do and what you shouldn't do. So golf is a part of our industry that we really don't spend much time on, and I appreciate Bruce sharing that information with us today.
Me too, and I'm going to get out there on the course, and I'm going to practice really hard. So, because I can see that this is a game that I should be spending a lot more attention to, and so forth. So, I'll get back out there. Promise you that. And thanks very much again, Bruce, for sharing that. It's been very interesting because I think as we've learned, the impact for golf is interesting compared to a lot of other sports. You don't hear about people traveling to play tennis, dare I say, in other locations so much. Golf is something that's very location specific.
Yeah, well, the beauty of golf courses are, thanks, Perry, but the beauty of golf courses are, for those that play golf know that the challenge, and it's just the experience of playing a different golf course, and every golf course you play is different, and it's just a joyful experience to be able to go out in a golf course that is set up in a different way, and just has some of those amazing things.
Fantastic. Listen, everybody, I've had some opportunity to play with Andy, Perry. One day, Bruce, you and I will have a game of golf. I'm sure we will, but it's certainly a game that I enjoy. And I guess our 90 seconds earlier on tried to make some similarities between the game of golf and the game of life, and how many things you can apply that you learn in golf to your personal life and your professional life and so on. So I think it's been a very interesting session. Some fantastic findings. I know you only touched the tip of the iceberg. Congratulations again on finishing your studies and getting through that. And congratulations on your soon to be graduation for the PhD. And I also want to say thank you to as many students that have joined us today. I see there's some good numbers. So welcome back to the students that are back at your college, back at your university. I know that some of you may not be actually in class, but whether you're in class or attending virtually, thank you for joining us back at 30 seconds. And finally, just before we move on to closing off the show, join me once again in thanking Bruce Korn on sharing his insights into golf tourism. And on that note, I'll just share my screen and we'll finalize our show today. Andy, would you like to just once again thank a few of our academic partners?
Actually, we always appreciate our academic partners, Sunway University, the University of Bahamas, and I saw our friend from Silver Mountain School of Hotel Management. Samir is out there on the group, and he's going to be speaking next week, and I know we'll promote that in a second. And Bob from PATA, I hope he'll contact us, and we should start talking about getting PATA, the Philippines chapter, as a partner on 30-minute talks, and we'll be happy to do a session just for PATA in the future.
Thanks very much, Andy. And as we've said, everybody, thank you very much from 30-minute talks. Perry, Andy, Bruce, for a very interesting session. And what about next week? Andy, you mentioned one of our guests. Just talk through the Everest and mountain tourism topic for next week.
Yeah, Perry will join me with this one, but actually our friend Samir Thapa, who's the founder of the Silver Mountain School of Hotel Management in Nepal, and he is very familiar with Mount Everest and has been to the base camp and more probably many times. So it is an interesting story of tourism, one of the most amazing destinations in the world. And I know that even Alan and I were talking last week that someday we're going to ask Samir to take us to the base camp. That's why I don't want to go any further than the base camp. But someday we will make that trip too, because people spend their entire lives dreaming about this journey. And it's going to be an interesting talk next week. We hope you'll join us.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Samir. We've done past webinars and 30-minute talk shows from the Bahamas, from Macau, from Vegas. And now to go to one of the true wonders of the world and to hear from Samir and talk about tourism in a destination like Nepal and Mount Everest. Really looking forward to that next week.
And as Perry and Andy have said, Samir is a friend and a colleague of ours. So thank you for joining us today, Samir. And we're all looking forward to your session next week. And don't forget, once again, the QR code is available now for those of you that want to get one of our certificates. Scan the code now. It'll also be available in the chat function in today's session. And ladies and gentlemen, from myself, Alan in Perth, Western Australia, thank you for joining us for 30-minute talks. And until next time, Andy.
Everybody, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week and join us to climb Mount Everest.
Absolutely. And we're looking forward to you joining us next week for that experience. Goodbye.
Fantastic. And once again, thank you very much again to Bruce, Korn, for your very interesting and valuable insights into golf tourism today. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.